Thank you. So thanks for having me, and thanks for welcoming me to your beautiful country and this beautiful city. I walked around this morning and forgot to eat lunch because I was having too good a time. So if there are any strange noises coming from me, it's my stomach. You don't need to translate that. That's for the translators. So thank you for the introduction. I did do a presentation of myself here. It is true, I've been the leader director for half a year, approximately, and I am on loan from my Danish employer, the Digital Public Library of Denmark, where I negotiate for all the public libraries, e-books and audiobooks. And it's becoming almost a 20 million euro business now, and it's growing every year, so my job there is becoming more and more stressful. I came to that from Copenhagen Libraries, as your president said, for over 10 years. And from there, I came to that from the Ministry of Culture, where I work with academic libraries. So I think I have sort of a broad library education. But the last couple of years, I've been mostly known for e-lending and digital lending. And EBLIDA, of course, is the European Bureau of Library Information and Documentation Associations. It was incorporated in 1902. It's headquartered in The Hague. And as your president says, it works for libraries on the European scene, because there are so many decisions made that affects libraries at the European level, so we need an organization that is working on the European level. And we're working for a free and equitable society where information and knowledge and culture is available to everyone. You can meet us on our social media. I refuse to make an X, so it's Twitter, and for me it will always be Twitter. Our annual conference is next year in Riga in April, so please, you're all invited, please come. It's going to be great. Before we go any further, I would say that I travel a lot. And I have a 4-year-old at home, Alma. And she's a little bit skeptical that people would invite me and listen to me. So, and as I said, she doesn't like me going away. So I thought we could try something. If I make a short video of you saying hi to her, so I will go 1, 2, 3, and you wave and say, "Hi, Alma," as loud as you can. I think it will blow her little mind, and it will score me some dad points and make my job a lot easier. Will you do that? Okay, I will go 1, 2, 3, and you say, "Hi, Alma." Okay, let's try this. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Hi. Fantastic, thank you. You've set a very high standard. You will expect this from every conference I go to from now on. Okay, so the agenda today, I want to talk about democracy and libraries and what are we doing there, why digital is important. I've sort of zoomed in on 3 particular aspects of it. And if there's time, I will talk about a European project called Elan that we are getting into. But let's start a different place. Let's start with democracy and what I've called a brief introduction. That's mostly to myself. You see, I made a mistake once. I thought this is a hermit crab. I actually looked up what it was called in Czech, and I forgot. It's something about kraba, poliv, something. Anyway, I thought that at some point that public libraries especially were like hermit crabs. You know, they will lose their shell, and they will go looking for some other shell, and they will lose that, and they will go looking for other shell. And I was getting a little bit tired of it, and an American colleague working at the New York Public Library said, "I think that libraries were traumatized by the invention of the internet, because they lost their monopoly on documents and information, the access to documents and information, and they've been traumatized ever since, and that's why they're trying out these new roles." So libraries are for democracy. They are fighting fake news. They are the new community centers. In Denmark, there was even a place where you could bring your apples and they would juice them for you. And I thought, this is an institution without a clear identity. Like a hermit crab, moving into all the wrong things like plastic bottles and coffee, these capsules or whatever they're doing. But like I said, that was sort of the old idea I had. But then this started happening, right? The attack on the American Congress, based on a colossal lie Brexit before that, 2016, built on systematic lying from the media. We've had these drag queen reading to children. Suddenly there are protesters outside the building. We have banning of books. In our lifetime, banning of books, like your president said, democracy is not so obvious anymore. And one of those books being banned is 1984, which is one big warning against banning things. I mean, it's incredible. It boggles the mind. So I thought, okay, we have to fight for democracy. And I gave myself a brief history lesson. Now, democracy started in 500 BC in Athens, and it lasted less than 200 years. After less than 200 years, Athens was invaded by Alexander the Great, and democracy was not seen again. Do you know when it was seen again in Greece? 1974, which means that modern democracy in Greece is younger than I am. For 2,500 years, they have had democracy for less than 10% of their time. Also, it wasn't democracy for everybody. It was just for men. It was just for people who had land there. They had to be free men. They had to have some money. So not guests, not women, not slaves. Historians are saying that less than 40,000 people probably had the right to vote in Athens. And it was a direct democracy. It wasn't representational like we're used to now. You would actually turn up in the morning, say, I want to be a democracy today. I want to be a Democrat today. And they would draw lots, and those were the people deciding matters today. And then tomorrow, some other people come, and they may take the direct opposite decision. So we also have the first democratic institutions. Who draws a lot? What are the rules? Who is paid what? And people need to trust their institutions, otherwise they won't work. So democracy is from demos, people, and kratos, power, but the kind of people that are perhaps not the elite, and the kind of power that is not necessarily administrative, but a little bit raw power. So it has a bit of a connotation of the masses taking control in a violent, uncontrolled way. And our famous philosophers like Plato didn't think it was a very good idea, actually. He famously believed that power should be had by philosophers, a small group of chosen philosophers. This democracy was power by the unwashed masses. Now, demos also has another connotation, which is the people who live here, we who live here. And we who live here need to defend ourselves, and we need to defend our way of life, so this is also the age of the Greek hoplite. So the free men who would vote would also have their armor, and they would have their weapon at home, and whenever there was a threat, they would go out and fight it. And they would fight it in phalanx. I'm not sure even what it's called in English or how it's pronounced. A phalanx, which riot police also use today with their plastic shields. And a phalanx will punish people. It will punish individualists. It promotes a collective. Everybody has to act as one. And then it works. So the guy on the right is Aeschylus, the tragic poet, and he wrote tragedies that we are still being played today, like Agamemnon and Electra. And when he died, he was probably proud of that, but what he was most proud of was that he actually fought for the Athenian democracy. So his tombstone says, it's a little longer than that, but it basically says, one who fought at Marathon. That was his legacy. One who fights for the people who live here. And the concept today, the modern concept of people can mean two different things. It can mean administrative, like in the word demography, an administrative unit. It can also mean of the people, like folk dance, folklore, folk music, something that is of the people that is not elite. The Greek didn't have a word for that. It only came on later. For a Greek, it would be completely obvious that, of course, we who live here, who decide for ourselves, who defend ourselves, of course, we're something else than those living over there. Now, in order to make decisions in a democracy, you need to be well informed. That's the basis. So you need access to information. You need to find the information, then you need to be able to access it. Then you need to be able to decode it. To make a wise decision, you also need empathy. You need to realize that you are not the end all of the universe. There are people around you who depend on you, that you are responsible for. In order to be that, in order to be extra empathetic, you need access to culture. You need to be able to access stories, art, that shows you that people don't necessarily think like you. And finally, you need to be able to debate. You need to be able to discuss your opinions. And I'm pretty sure that this is what the library does. More than any other institution, this is what the library does. It allows you to make well-informed decisions. It allows you to acquire the wisdom to make the right decisions. It also goes to the duality of at least the public library, because the public library has always been caught between the learning dimension, the information dimension, and the cultural dimension. And we see this all the time when we do projects, when we apply for projects. When we do them in a cultural sense, we don't get points for the learning part. And when we go to the learning part and try to, we promote ourselves at a place where you can find information, where you can learn sort of the academic side of things, we don't get the points for the culture side. So this actually also points to the dichotomy and the duality that the public library has always found itself in, and which has been a weakness, but which I believe we need to turn into a strength. We need to be proud of the fact that we are straddling both these dimensions. And as for the democratic debate, it is essential that you are able to debate in a free and safe spaces. One of the ways that freedom of expression is put underfoot is not necessarily by direct orders that you can't talk about this or that, but that you are being assaulted afterwards. There is no rule in New York that says that you cannot actually have books about trans children or children who believe that they are born into the wrong gender. There's no rule against having books on that. But when the state librarian promoted one of the books at a conference, she was immediately put on administrative leave. There were sanctions, there were complaints, and it took half a year before she was reinstated and she got an apology. Because the attack on the freedom of information came after, not before. There were no laws against it, but it came after. And that's not a free and safe space. We need free and safe spaces. Like the Danish theologian who worked just after the German occupation, after World War II, he wrote a book called What is Democracy? And he said, democracy is not a way of governing, it's a way of life. It's a way of thinking, it's a mindset. Which the American army, just to take a weird example, also found out when they invaded Afghanistan and thought you can invade another country, and for good reason, I'm not saying that. You can invade another country and say, you are now a democracy, go. Because they were never a democracy. They had no idea what a democracy is, how it's supposed to work, how you're supposed to think. It's something deep within us, it's deep within our institutions, especially the library. It's also pretty rare. Not only is democracy very rare historically, it's also very rare in our modern day lives. Your family and your workplace is where you spend most of your time, but your family is not a democracy. My family, at least, is not a democracy. There's my girlfriend, there's me, and then there's the children, right? Your workplace is not a democracy. Democracy has been called a little island in a stormy sea. Very few things in life is actually a democracy, not only historically, but presently. So the Danish Youth Council is an umbrella organization for all youth organizations in Denmark. And they made a democracy report, and they've been making democracy reports ever since. What is the state of democracy among the Danish youth? So they ask people, do you participate in this and that? Do you talk with? Do you debate? Do you turn up for this and that? And they distinguish between trust and self-confidence. You need trust in the institutions and the professions in the institutions in order to be a democratic participant. If you don't trust them, you won't go. You also need self-confidence. You need to feel that what you have as an opinion actually matters, that you're allowed to have this opinion and you can express it. So trust and self-confidence is paramount to democratic behavior, and only half of the Danish youth actually feel self-confident participating in a modern democracy. The more educated ones feel more safe and more confident than the more poorly educated. So the better educated ones will say, I don't really have the time. They're still pretty confident, but the ones without proper education don't have the self-confidence. They will directly cite, I don't have the confidence to make my voice heard. I don't feel safe. So Aarhus libraries have taken these reports from the youth councils, and they've made 5 aspects that goes into having good democratic debates, good democratic practices. You need safe spaces, you need inclusion, you need to facilitate them, you need literacy, and you need exposure to culture, as I said. So where is the library able to play a part here? So this is a quiz, you can't win anything. And the right answer is all of them. This is what we do. This is what libraries do. So is the library a neutral space? If it's safe, is it also neutral? No. The library is not a neutral place because in libraries we believe in the very radical notion that information and knowledge and culture belongs to everybody and everybody should be able to access it. This is not a given. This is an opinion. So we cannot actually agree with some of the political parties that we're seeing now. We are not the ones who are saying, well, this opinion is as good as that other opinion, because if that other opinion means that we cannot run the public library like we're supposed to, that access to information is not a thing, or that you will be assaulted afterwards if you have an opinion. We can't back that political party, even though they're part of the democratic process and they get votes. We're actually a very radical institution in that sense. So I'll give you a case. A Baltic colleague, I won't out that person, so I'll just say Baltic colleague. That person wrote to me in August and says, I need your advice. And I answered, okay. This is an email from a patron of that library. And the email says, I'm writing to ask why books by this person, which is currently subject to sanctions by the European Union, are in the library's collection. Given that sanctions are often imposed for various serious reasons, I wonder how this fits with the library's responsibility, and so on and so on. It's a very, very polite way of asking, why the hell do you have these books on the shelf? So they investigated, and they see no evidence in these books about we should really attack Ukraine and we should kill everybody. It's not like that, but there is clear traces of what they call Russian thinking. And the author is sanctioned. So should we move the books? Should we remove the books from the shelves? So, hands up, should we remove them or should we leave them? Should we remove the books? Should we let them be? Oh, come on, that was 1 for and 2 against. You have 400 of you. Once again, should we remove these books from the shelves? No. Should we keep the books on the shelves? Okay. I'm not taking a picture. This is not an official referendum. So my own answer, I was waffling a little bit. I answered, so, well, you can remove the books because it's a sanctioned author, and I know that Baltic states are feeling a little bit more anxious about Russia than we are, perhaps. Or you can leave them, and you can refer to the fact that you have the books as something that Russia would never do, because we believe that different opinions should be there. So we are proud of having the books, as long as you make a well-thought-out and explicit decision, like you just did. And I believe it ended up 3 to 120, something like that. So what is the EU doing about all this? The EU made a report that connected culture to democracy. And what they found out from the international research is that cultural activities will also, people that are interested in cultural activities will also be interested in democratic activities, in social cohesion and social activities. And so they brought this evidence, you can find this report on the net, they brought this evidence into the work plan for culture 2023 to 2026. So the EU is now being a lot more focused on getting culture and supporting culture, getting it into sort of the mainstream work of the EU, even though at the cultural field, the EU does not have any legislative powers. It can only suggest. So in the work plan for culture, 23 to 26, from the council, these are council conclusions. This is a very heavy document. And you're not supposed to read this. This is just if you can see them later. But you can see here that they are acknowledging that culture is an infinite source of inspiration and innovation, that the role of culture is an integral element in sustainable development, and so on. I can't move my head and also talk into this one. So I'll try this. And in the light of the ongoing Russian war and in light of the COVID crisis and sustainability issues, we need a lot more culture everywhere in whatever the EU is doing. So they put it into the work plan. And the work plan for culture is in has four, what should we call them, priorities of the EU, which is artists and cultural professionals, culture for the people, culture for the planet, and culture for co-creative partnerships. And in that, they put an actual task that for the first time in the history of the EU mentions libraries explicitly. This was a lobbying victory for IBLIDA and a lobbying victory for Public Libraries 2030, our strategic partners. We actually made them put libraries in explicitly for the first time. So, as you can see here in the rationale, libraries play a key role in Europe's democratic, social, cultural, and educational landscape at all levels. So this is a completely new highlighting of the roles of libraries. And they have put in place what is called an OMC process. It stands for Open Method of Coordination, in German, Koalition der Willigen, because they don't have any legislative power, so the countries can send people to this process. And you have sent, I believe, Thomas Fortin from the National Library. My pronunciation is horrible, I'm sorry. But you also have a representative in this process. And they are going about drawing in evidence for all that public libraries and academic libraries are doing, mostly public libraries, making a report on best practice for all of Europe. And they will explore these 5 factors: the cultural and social dimension, democracy building, sustainable development, and digital transformation, and only as number 5, books and literature and reading. So this is also a recognition that public libraries especially are doing a lot of new things. This is not just a hermit crab. This is for real. The institution is changing. And since there is a German guy who's heading this part of the work, trying to find out best practice in these categories, this is the most German thing I've ever seen. These are all the categories on which libraries are working and starting to list best practice for all of them, being drawn from all the member countries. And then why digital? Because in all of this democratic thing and thinking, why digital? This, in fact, is a very easy question to answer, because in 2005, on top, the introduction of the new Pope. 2013, the introduction of the new Pope. Can you see the difference? This is New Year's Eve on Champs-Élysées in Paris. Everybody's got a phone. Digital is everywhere. There's even a research that said that 10% won't put down their phone during sex. I have colleagues who believe we can make people put down their phone and give them a book, and I point to this research and say, really? Really? Now, these are pictures from Singapore. I stole it from another presentation about the digital and physical meeting in the library and why it's really important. They have these wonderful digital equipment that nobody uses because they're in the physical library and they're thinking physically. Wonderful digital reading screens that people are using to put their book on because they're in the physical library, they're thinking physically. But they're also very proud of the school children, the amount of school children that visit the libraries. And I found the school children. There they are. They're on the floor with their phones. These are the digital natives. If we want to do anything, I mean, we could talk about this for hours and hours, but it always comes down to the fact that you want to do anything. You want to involve them. You want them to read. You want them to be part of democracy. You need to get it on their phones because you're not going to get them to put down their phones. And I've given you the research to back that up now. This is from Denmark. We have, as you can see, we have 45% strictly physical users. We have 34% strictly digital users, and we have 22 who uses both. So the 34% who strictly uses us digital, we would never be able to reach without digital. These are completely new user groups that we would not otherwise be able to reach. It's also very expensive to go into digital, of course, but these are completely new user groups, and they are comprised to a very large degree of young people. No digital, no young people, no new generation, nobody to use the library dies, everybody's sad, the end. Okay, I'll close you off with 3 particular aspects that I hope we can talk a lot more about at the workshop tomorrow. One is promotion. In digital, it's very, very important that you promote. You think it promotes itself, it doesn't. It's vice versa. It's the other way around. People need guiding in the digital realm. The digital divide is very real. It's not only age, it's also socioeconomic. If you see this graph here, I can see if I can do this. Yes. This is before COVID. The black one is college educated, and the lesser one is no college education. They take out children's literature from us digitally at about the same rate. Then COVID hits. And the college-educated people will use it a lot more than the non-college educated. Then people go back to work and school. Now, the college-educated people have now learned this service and are using it a lot more than the non-college educated for their children. And when COVID hits again, their use is still larger. You see, COVID and then a much higher use. So just making things available is not enough. We need to promote it. Secondly, access. There's a completely inexcusable market failure at the moment for access to digital literature. And I know that Czechia is not very happy with its digital solutions or its availability. And it's a problem. In Denmark, we've been a little bit more lucky. We have 1.6 loans per citizen, digital loans. Greece has 0.002, Portugal has 0. This is a difference in the European Union that we would never otherwise accept. It's completely insane. And it aggravates the digital divide between the haves and the have-nots, between people who can use digital solutions and not. And it hurts our national literatures, because when you don't have a library solution, you are left with the commercial solutions. The commercial solutions are American and English. So your children grow up without the ability to access your national literature digitally. Finally, oh yeah, I brought a table for you to see these crazy numbers, but I just told you, so that's fine. You can see over here. These are old figures now, but these are e-lending figures per citizen. And the differences are monstrous. Right. Media literacy, the final one, the decoding of the media, is also something that needs to be taught. What is the purpose of fake news? The purpose of fake news is not to make you believe any sort of crazy thing, necessarily. The point of fake news is to make you not believe anything. The point of fake news is to make you doubt everything you thought you knew. It goes directly to what I just said was trust. Trust in the institution is paramount for democratic behavior and democratic thinking. Trump advisor Steve Bannon said, how do you do this? You flood the zone with shit. Sorry for the expression, it's what he said. You just flush the media zone with every stupid thing, and in the end, people will start wondering what to believe. Donald Trump just said that in some states, they do abortions after the child is born, and nobody questions it. It's crazy, it's insane. But that's just Trump being Trump. In Singapore, and I'll leave you with this, in Singapore they have something called the total defense. It's a very, very small country. They have very big neighbors, China and Malaysia. They realize they can't fight for themselves only with the military. So they have a total defense comprised of psychological defense, social defense, and so on. And in the right corner here is the library. And the library is part of the defense because libraries teaches people what to believe and how to criticize news that they get online. It's called SURE, the program, for look at the source, try to understand, do your own research, and then evaluate, the SURE program. And in the new version of this total defense, they now have 6, but the digital one here in the middle also has this SURE part. So whenever the total defense is up and talking with ministers at their press conferences, there will be the generals with all their uniforms and all their stars, and at the end there will be the librarian, who is also part of the defense of Singapore. Like the Athenians was a part, everyone was a part of the defense of Athens, because they are the ones who live here, and democracy is about the people who live here, and we are all supposed to defend it. It's worth defending. To quote one of your prize winners, long live democracy and long live libraries. I'll leave you with that. And if I hadn't broken this, I will sum up and say democracy is rare historically, it's rare in the present, it's under pressure. It's a way of life and it's tied to a sense of place and people and community. It relies on active participation, which requires trust and self-confidence. It's ideally suited to work for democracy by working for safe spaces, inclusion, facilitation, literacy, and exposure to culture. We must develop our digital side because digitization has just begun and the new generations are fully digital. You can start with promotion, access, and media literacy, or decoding. And the EU is supporting libraries' role like never before, and it's up to us to seize this moment. Thank you.
Thank you. Yo. Thank you, Mikkel, for the very impressive presentation, which really opens quite a lot of things. Now is the time for questions. Teď přichází chvíle na otázky. Podíváme se, co už mezi tím přišlo přes Eventy. Okay, there is a first question for you. Do you think that AI tools like Perplexity contribute to the development of democracy?
I don't want to depress anybody, but whenever we see a new tool, like the internet was supposed to really help democracy, it only works for the first couple of years, and then it's controlled by people with a lot more money than us. So, well, it has the potential, and it was actually a topic at our annual conference in Lisbon earlier in the year, who is supposed to people the new libraries. How do we get the people who are interested in working in a library to also be interested in artificial intelligence and these very technical questions, because it's very difficult, artificial intelligence. So we risk falling behind if we cannot get these kinds of people. So my short answer would be that yes, it has the potential, but we have to seize it and we cannot be naive, because otherwise it will go the way of the internet.
Thank you. There is still no other questions, so I will ask one. Just following this one, actually it's a double question. The first part is, do you think the libraries are prepared for the AI-driven world? And the second part of the question is, while we are not prepared, so what should we do to be prepared and to really take a reasonable role in this, new world?
Well, the way that if my friend from the New York Public Library is right, and libraries have been traumatized for 30 years by the internet, then artificial intelligence is also a threat in the sense that it enables people to even more bypass the library. But it's also an opportunity in the sense that we can build completely new discovery services, that people can really interact with our collections. So instead of, I know this is, probably shouldn't say it, but not every librarian has read every book. And some don't do these sort of reference interviews that well if they're in something that they don't know anything about. So we have the opportunity to get help from somebody who did read all the books and who can enter into a conversation with users about literature. So we can make the literature discovery process a lot more interesting and a lot more rewarding. And we shouldn't fight things that make access to our collections even easier and even more interesting. So yeah, I'll stick to that.
Thank you. A máme další dotaz přes Eventy. Another question from the Eventy. How do you best get youth actually interested in democracy?
Right, so according to the Danish Youth Council, what motivates younger people is when they realize that they actually have a say. They have a part in deciding what happens to society around them. Because many people will say, I'm not interested in politics. And when you ask them, so you're not interested in how values are distributed in society? And they will say, oh, of course I am, but that is politics. And once, according to this research, once young people realize that they can actually change things by using their vote, by using their democratic powers to debate and spread ideas, then they become interested. But there's a threshold of apathy that needs to be traversed. They need that spark, they need that kick. So, I mean, it might be as easy as having these democratic events in physical form, in digital form, and making people realize this is actually a safe space. I might not have the self-confidence, but I can come here and I can be heard and I can hear other arguments and it makes a difference.
Thank you. Eventy nic dalšího není. Má někdo dotaz přímo z publika na mikrofon? Doběhneme s mikrofonem. No? Okay, so it's the time to express our sincere thanks for your presentation. You are with us tomorrow as well at the workshop, and you are probably approachable during the dinner, yes. So we can continue to ask our question. And thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.